All right, so good morning. This is the first time I say good morning. Usually it's good afternoon or buenas tardes or good evening, but it's a very, very important topic today as we're approaching the Passover holiday, as we're getting ready for Mashiach. I named the topic, what language does God speak?
Hebrew.
No, you will be surprised. You will be very, very surprised. And it's not Swahili, definitely not Chinese, Spanish maybe. There are actually more than 6,000 languages and dialects in the world today, and that includes all the variations of certain languages. Many languages have become extinct. New ones are being formed. But what is language? Language is a means of communication, different forms of communication. For example, we have mail, we have email. For those of you who remember, we used to have fax, which we don't use today, but it's a means of communication. What does communication do? It forms a link between people. It could be business partners, it could be family, it could be friends. It's an important link. People who cannot see or hear definitely have a handicap. But thank God, because of technology these days, even people who are handicapped, cannot see well, cannot hear well, there's certain technology that enables them to communicate. But it's a limited form of communication. So why is communication so important to us? We need to get ideas across. We want to hopefully understand each other, because miscommunication or misunderstandings is a recipe for disaster in any relationship. To have a common language can make a big difference. And you know where I noticed this? Imagine you're traveling to Europe or to Asia where they don't speak your language. Let's say you go to Vietnam for whatever reason, and your mother tongue is Spanish. And you meet up with someone either from your country or one who speaks your language fluently, and it makes such a difference. You feel so good. In German they call it, oh, you're my Landsmann, or in Spanish, compatriota, or in English, countryman, from the same country. It's a good feeling that amongst strangers, you're able to find someone who you can communicate with. All of a sudden, that closeness, that bond that existed in your country is a lot more intense. You depend on it, you enjoy it, you appreciate it a lot more because you're in a foreign land. So obviously, a common language does bridge the distance between people. And sometimes there's a very, very big distance. And the more differences between people, whether it is in culture, religion, ideas, the more distance, unfortunately, there is. So if we can somehow get these people to have something in common, obviously it will bring them closer to each other. And the language does bring people closer. There's also something called body language. You know what that is? Sometimes people can see certain things about you, especially if they're paying attention, and realize certain things. It's also important when you're looking at people, perhaps interviewing them for a job, that you study their body language if there's anything that you can see, that you can observe. Because in body language, some things will be noticeable, some things will be obvious, and some things not. What would be something that is obvious in a body language? A smile. A smile is not only obvious, it's international. As far as I know, if you smile in Japan, they understand what that means. And if you show a sour face, people understand what that is, regardless of which country you're in. It's international. Body language. Someone who's sad and bitter, it's a very clear signal of what's going on with them. But there's something very interesting in our Torah. In the book of Mishlei, in the book of Proverbs, that Solomon writes, there's something even more powerful than the body language, and that's the hearts. The hearts communicate with each other. And he says a very powerful verse, which is an important lesson. Kamayim hapanim lapanim, ken lev ha'adam la'adam. When you look at water, you will see your reflection. You smile, you see your smile. You show a sour face, you see a sour face. You can see at the water your own reflection. Ken lev ha'adam la'adam, so do the hearts see the other reflection. If you feel good towards someone, you like someone deeply, they also do. It's mutual. You don't even have to talk. The heart can sense. The heart is very intuitive. As long as you know each other, it's not the first time that you met. First time, sometimes people have different impressions. It's possible. But over time, people get to know each other. There's no need to talk. A husband knows if his wife loves him or not. And a wife knows if her husband really cares about her. Obviously, there's other ways to know that. But the heart knows the truth. You can't hide. You can't hide it from the heart. So the hearts can communicate even without words. But then there is a fake language. Have you heard about that? There's something called a fake language. Flattery. You know, in Spanish we say, hacerle la barba. If you understand Spanish slang, depending on the country you come from, sometimes people like to flatter, and I don't know the exact equivalent in English. There's a lot of slang in English too that pretty much says the same thing, that you want to be on somebody's good side, you want to somehow flatter him. And even though you don't really mean it, but you want to get the job perhaps, the promotion, and it's fake. They say money talks. Is that good or bad? It's of course not so good. It's powerful. Yes, money does talk. It's powerful, but it's not real. It's the money that people are using either to buy you or to buy the position that they want. And then they say talk is cheap. Have you heard that one in English? Talk is cheap. A lot of people talk. They're communicating, but they cannot back it up. It's very, very shallow. If you cannot back it up, it's cheap. But talk can also be powerful when it's used in the right way to motivate people and to uplift their spirits. Right? We see this all the time. Sometimes we're impressed, we're inspired, we're motivated by a good talk coming from someone hopefully who's well-intended. He's not just flattering. So the talk can be very, very powerful. It's interesting that students, years later, when they're already adults, perhaps married with children of their own, can recall teachers from the early grades who left a permanent impression on them, a positive or negative, depending on how they were treated. If they were cared for, if the teacher was nice, if he was calm and caring. They have memories going back all the way when they were children, because that talk to them, even as children, left a permanent mark on them. So now we're going to talk a little bit about God. God speaks to us, but in what language does He speak to us? As you can see, I don't really mean the languages of the world. There's another form of communication with which God speaks to us. And why does He speak to us? Because it does not make sense for Him to have created the world and to just left us to figure it out on our own. Oh, just figure everything out on your own, what you need to do, how to live your life. It just does not make sense. With animals, it's a lot easier because they have instincts, because that's all they need to survive. But the human being is a lot more developed. He has a soul. He has something called free will in certain areas of life. He better know what to do. And you only get one chance, one real chance. And you don't have unlimited time, 70 years, 80 years, to just do it right, to succeed. Life is a journey. Life is a mission. The Jewish people have a unique mission. But every human being is special. Every human being, regardless of their background, religion, faith, they're all special. People don't understand it sometimes when they abuse others who they don't think highly of. But he's a human being, created in the image of God. Just perhaps with a different function, a different job, a different mission. That's all. That's the only difference. The languages and the cultures, of course, has created tremendous distance between people. But it's not just so much the culture and the languages, it's also the attitude and their perspective of life, how people view life. Do they view it in a positive way or in the wrong way? So there must have been something that God left behind to tell us how to behave ourselves, how to get along, and how to succeed. So it's impossible for Him to have created the world without a manual of instructions. That's what I call it. There must be a manual of instructions. You buy a sophisticated machine these days, you have to know how to use it. Maybe it's not written in good English. It was written, in Japan or in China, and the English is not so perfect, but hopefully the directions are there and you know which buttons to press. There needs to be, for this sophisticated world, some sort of manual of instruction. God did endow the human being with enough intelligence in reality, even without a manual of instructions, with enough intelligence to realize certain things. We have a conscience. We have a soul. So the soul knows certain things on its own. Of course, it takes time for the human being to mature. We don't know everything as children. It takes time, but eventually, hopefully, as adults, we come to the realization that there are certain things that are expected of us. So, how do we know what God wants of us? So, if you have a manual of instructions, as the Jewish people have, in some ways it's a little easier. But without a manual of instructions, we said man is intelligent enough. And how will he know from just using his intelligence what is expected of him? By observation. Abraham, for example, did not have a manual of instructions. And he's used as an example for Jews and non-Jews alike. There's no Jewish people yet. He observed. He asked questions. He didn't just live his life and just exist like many people do. They just exist. They eat, they drink, they go to sleep, they go to work. Right? He asked questions. He contemplated the beauty of creation. He says, wow. As a child, he's a child, so he's very impressionable. It's so beautiful. There's so much design. Who planned this? So he asked a very important question. Somebody must have planned it. It couldn't be, as many want to claim today, just by evolution, by itself. There was a big bang, all kinds of stories. You have to be very careful. As much as we admire science, and it's really admirable, the achievements of science, intelligent people who have, of course, accomplished a great deal, many things are beneficial to mankind. So we don't ridicule science. On the contrary, we appreciate its value. But you have to be careful. You have to be careful that it does not in any way serve as an alternative to a supreme being, the God of creation. That's why faith in Judaism is so fundamental. And you need to be very careful from anything that cools it off, in any way cools off one's faith in attributing too much importance, exaggerated importance, to that which is not compatible with the Torah beliefs. So Abraham is contemplating the beauty in the world, the design, the plan, the harmony, and he sees so many beautiful colors. I don't know how many of you have seen many birds. You've seen some birds, you've seen pigeons, you've seen sparrows, you've seen perhaps parrots. There's some common birds you see, but there's a lot of birds in the world. It's so beautiful, feathers, colors, incredible design. It's so beautiful to see, but it's also important to see, not just beautiful, because you see, wow, who did all of this? Who designed it all? It's so beautiful, there's so much harmony. What for? Look at the fruits. If we wouldn't have yellow fruits, orange fruit, green fruit, red fruit, you think we would be as attracted to it? Color makes us attracted to something. Birds are attracted because of the color. They can see if it's ripe or not by the color. Color says so much. And depending on what the color is, it also represents something. Why something blue? Why something red? Why isn't a tomato a different color than what it is? There's a reason for all of that, by the way. And I have a whole lecture about colors in discussing the topics of the Kabbalah. What is the significance of this or that color? How about green? What is green? We have a lot of green. Grass is green. Then why is the sky so blue? Even though, of course, there's a scientific explanation for it, but there's also a deeper explanation, a spiritual explanation for everything that God created in the world. Why do we need all of this? But obviously there's a reason for everything. So Abraham contemplated, asked questions, and he didn't have it easy because there were not too many people that can answer his questions. Not too many people that reached his conclusions. He was almost on his own. But look how one person on his own, without the help of others, can achieve so much. Eventually God communicated to him. And that's where I'm headed. There is a language that God speaks to us. Yes, in the past, that language included prophecy, through prophetic visions. And today, there are different levels of dreams, which I have a whole lecture about, the significance of real dreams, not fake dreams, not nightmares, not dreams that perhaps you were thinking about something, but real dreams that are a mini prophecy sometimes, telling you something about the future. And why would God want to communicate through a dream? But God communicates in various ways. In various ways, different means, but He communicates with us. It is not possible that He would have just created the world and abandoned it to us like many philosophers believed. Of course God created the world. He cannot create itself, but He's no longer around and He's not involved. So why pray to Him? Why acknowledge Him? Does He talk to you? The answer is yes, He does. You just haven't figured out His language. How does He communicate with us? And that's why I think this is important to understand. What is the language that God communicates with us on a regular basis, not from time to time through a dream and the like? One way that one can tell that God is involved and that God communicates with us, besides the manual of instructions, which is very important for the Jew, is history. If you really analyze history from the very beginning of time, as far as we know, until today, you will see certain interesting things stand out. So much war. You know how many millions of people were killed just in World War I and World War II? You don't have to go back to Genghis Khan. There's millions and millions of people who were butchered throughout history, butchered. Such cruelty. It's disgusting. If you read the history, it says, what are these people doing? Killing other human beings, treating them like animals. Most people don't read all of history. They don't realize how much cruelty there was. Some people are more aware of the recent history, that there was World War I and World War II. Millions of people died. For what? So it's important to read history. We all perhaps recall the saying that those who don't learn history are doomed to repeat history. In other words, to repeat the mistakes of the past, because there are many mistakes. So history is also a means by which you can see God's involvement in this world, how He communicates with us, what He has done, what has happened, because it doesn't add up, it doesn't make sense. All this evil in the world, what for? Is this the kind of world God wants? Why did He enable it? Why did He allow it? Why didn't He intervene and stop it? You see how this raises all kinds of questions, including the Holocaust. The chosen people? Really? Chosen? Chosen to be killed in such a manner? 6 million of them? What about that? Sir, please study the Torah. The Torah has some explanations, not all, some explanations as to why terrible things happen in the world. Who's to blame for it? So instead of just asking, the book is available and has been translated into more languages than any other book. So no one has the excuse today not to study Torah. Study, not to read, to study seriously, in depth, to get to know God a little bit better, because He speaks to us through the Torah, through history. This is how He communicates with us. The Jewish people, through this very valuable manual of instructions, are able to know what to do, what not to do, how to behave themselves. But it does not mean in any way that if you read the manual of instructions that you will come out a saint and that you will succeed in life. You know why? If you go back to the very beginning of creation, you will notice that there was something called a serpent. A very, very dangerous serpent. The Torah has to tell us about a serpent that can talk. Do you know of any serpent that can talk? I know some birds can mimic the voice of a human being, but a serpent? I never heard of that. What people fail to realize is that you cannot always have the entire picture just by reading the Torah. You need to look at the Midrash and other sources that supplemented the Torah with the details that the Torah doesn't write about. That's why the oral tradition is very important to the Jew, extremely important. Without it, we don't have a complete picture. And in that Torah, in the very, very beginning, there's a serpent that began to talk. And what is that all about? It's about the evil inclination. That's what it's all about. That evil inclination is a powerful foe, an enemy, that is going to give you a very hard time. Here we have a clear manual of instructions, black and white. Yes, but man's evil inclination is so powerful. And even the best of the best can fail and fall. So don't ever be surprised. How could this be that this man with a long beard did such a terrible thing? Or how could it be that this man who's supposed to be observant and supposed to be charitable is so stingy and so cruel? Doesn't he follow the manual of instructions? And the answer is no, he doesn't. But I've seen him keep Shabbat. I've seen him keep the holidays. So what? A lot of people fail when it comes to money. Money, Very, very powerful pull. Money is like an idol. A lot of people fall. Dishonest. Dishonest? Yes, dishonest. You mean he will steal? He will take your money? Yes. But how could it be? He has a beard. Well, you know, even a goat has a little beard. So what? The beard doesn't do anything. Sometimes it actually can camouflage or serve as a disguise. Some people are hypocrites. That word is not just in the dictionary. It's a real word. People sometimes can be hypocritical. That's just human nature. So here we have a manual of instructions that is extremely important, but it only can serve as a guide to those who are willing to live by it. People are not willing to live by it because of that serpent, that evil inclination. They will fall. They will make mistakes. Many homes break up. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Why are they breaking up? They were so in love with each other. And they were, by the way. It was not fake. They were in love. There was a real love. It was pure. Something is missing. What could be missing? You know, when you bake a cake, have you ever baked cake? Or challah, bread? Sometimes it can come out flat. What happened? So today you can go to Google. Flat cake. Flat bread. Why? Oh, maybe you didn't put enough salt and sugar. You didn't knead it enough. You didn't wait enough for it to grow. All kinds of reasons of why the bread or the cake did not come out right. You know, the same thing happens with human relationships. People are not perfect. Human being is very fragile. Very, very fragile. So if he does not really live by the Torah sincerely, 100%, he can make many, many mistakes. Because that evil inclination is extremely powerful. Not just powerful, extremely powerful. But that's part of life. Part of God's plan is to give us free will. In order for us to be rewarded, it can't just be easy. It's going to be easy. Hashem doesn't need robots. He doesn't need angels. He has enough angels. You know how many angels he has? He has enough angels. He wants human beings here who have the ability to do right and wrong. And if they succeed, they will be rewarded accordingly. If they fail, obviously their destination will be different than those who are headed in the proper destination. The outcome of our decisions is going to make a difference. But not all decisions. There are some things that are not up to us, and that's a whole different topic, the topic of mazal, destiny, that we cannot make all the decisions, who we're going to end up marrying, what kind of a life we will have. But when it comes to the area of being good or bad, righteous or evil, that's where free will comes into being. Do you pray? Do you say thank you? Do you smile? What is your attitude? How do you see life? Are you bitter, disappointed? You yell, you curse, or you bless and pray? That's up to us. Good deeds versus bad deeds. But everything else, who your neighbors are going to be, what's going to happen in your life, how much money you're going to make, careers, we barely have any say in those matters, in those decisions. So for a Jew, it's so important for him to continuously consult the Torah, to learn it on a regular basis, to have a connection with some rabbi that he can speak to clarify some doubts. It makes it a lot easier. For somebody who's not Jewish, you can still be a very, very precious human being. And there are such individuals all over the place, in every country, righteous individuals who want to do the right thing. They're attracted to that which is divine. They realize subconsciously that life has meaning, and it's not just existence to eat, sleep, and work. And obviously, if you pay close attention like Abraham did, you will reach the same conclusions, that God wants us to behave in a certain way, which I'm going to explain soon. But what does all of this have to do with Pesach? I'm speaking about this right before the holiday of Pesach, because in the Pesach you will find a book called the Haggadah. What's the Haggadah? Most of you, I'm sure, know what that Haggadah is, what it looks like, and what it describes and says. And you know, of course, that it's a mitzvah to read from it at the table, at the night time when we celebrate during the Seder. And what do we talk about? We talk about the redemption from Egypt, the miracles of the past, what happened and how God took us out. And we're so thankful. What is this Haggadah? It's not just a little booklet about what happened in Egypt. In reality, if you pay close attention to the words that you're going to be saying from the Haggadah, it's a summary, an abridged history of the Jewish people from the beginning of time until the end of time. From the beginning until the end. It's a summary Here we had a manual of instructions, the 5 books of Moses they're called, right? Plus the prophecies, of course, and the writings. No, here we have the Haggadah that was put together years later that contains a summary, an important summary of all of history for the Jew to talk about with his family, but especially with his children. You want to transmit to them the faith that you have, the faith of your father and your grandfather, of all those generations, a very strong faith, a strong connection with the God who took you out of Egypt. We want to make sure you understand why we're willing to be so committed, even today, when it's not so obvious as it was in the past that we saw open miracles. Then why are you still so observant that? So we want to talk a little bit about the whole relationship with God, what He did for us in the past, what He continues to do for us, how He's involved, how He protects us, how miracles still occur, but they're concealed. They're not as open as in the past. So that's why the Haggadah is a very important booklet. But what do we see from the Haggadah? What do we learn from the Haggadah? We become familiar with God's language. That's what it really amounts to. The Haggadah serves as an example of how God communicates with us at all times and in what language He speaks to us. You know, it's so funny how sometimes you have specialists, linguists, scientists who want to figure out what the hieroglyphics say. You know what hieroglyphics are? In Egypt they had hieroglyphics. Pictures, it's not even an alphabet. And they've figured out, they've done a pretty good job after a lot of time and effort to figure out what those hieroglyphics mean. Pictures. They spent so much time and effort on that. Why not figure out God's script? He has a script too. He has a language. He has an alphabet. He communicates with us. Why not spend some time figuring out Him? So it's interesting how people prefer to figure out what the ancient civilizations have written. I'm not saying it's not important. It's good. If you're interested in that, figure out, learn a little bit about the past, but don't ignore the more important language, God's language. So how are we going to do that? So I began to say that the Haggadah helps a little bit. It definitely helps us understand a little bit what went on. Even though, in reality, there's an easier way, without the Haggadah even, as I began to say with Abraham, and that is called the senses. The best way to experience what's going on in life, in the world, is through our senses. We have eyes, we have ears, we have the sense of smell, sense of touch. They're very powerful if they're used properly. Could you imagine if somebody could not see or hear, and all of a sudden, through an implant, they're able to hear? Have you seen any video of those little infants, babies, or even adults, who after an implant, the doctor turned on the volume, wow! And all of a sudden they can hear their mother for the first time. You should have seen the expression of these babies or the adults. It's so emotional. It's so emotional. It's exciting. For the first time in their life, they're able to hear and to see, which they couldn't before. What has happened now? It's not just the ability to hear or the ability to see, it's to appreciate what you didn't have before. Hopefully, that's the goal. Appreciate what you have. You were born with all these senses. Do you know what it is not to have one of them? Look at those individuals that don't. Or look at those that didn't have and now have it, how they reacted to it. It could be very, very emotional. Even putting on glasses, sometimes you can see things with a lot greater clarity. Glasses help us see because sometimes we don't see. We're nearsighted. We don't see. There's so much to see that we cannot appreciate if we don't put on those glasses. I don't know how many of you have used binoculars or a telescope, but these are incredible tools. They enable us to see farther, greater distances. They enable us to see 3 dimensions. With binoculars, for example, if you only had one eye, you would not be able to see the depth. You would not be able to figure out distance. So there's a lot that the senses, just the senses alone, if we use them right, enable us to experience. So yes, the senses are definitely powerful. Microscopes enable us also to see the small creatures that God created in the world. So today, we're able to see and know, hopefully, a lot more than in the past. But you know what happens? Even with all the knowledge that we have, with all the tools, all the technology, the sechel, the mind, is still handicapped. The mind is not always willing to accept certain truths and certain realities. The mind, I say sometimes, is the one that's nearsighted. Because the eyes can see. Can't you see? It's obvious. No, I see something else. Is it a bird or a plane? Have you heard that one? Oh, no, it's Superman. What is it? Sir, come on. Take a close look. The mind sometimes refuses, not that it doesn't see, it refuses to accept certain realities. So what happens in the Haggadah? In the Haggadah, we're not using our senses anymore. In the Haggadah, the Jewish people understand that something happened very important in the past. We left Egypt. And we left Egypt with a very limited understanding of God. We thought that this God, you know how he communicates with us and with mankind? He punishes. Did you see those punishments in Egypt, the 10 plagues? Oh, God punishes. He hits. And all the suffering, look, this is the type of God he is. So when we left Egypt, even though of course we're leaving bondage, this is the limited familiarity that we had with God. What happens in the 40 years of the desert? I don't know if you're going to be here 40 years in this class. But the 40 years in the desert was a school. It was a school. These people were just slaves. They have to be taught what God expects of them, what he wants for this world. They went through this school for 40 years before they entered Israel, after which they're on their own. And they find out something incredible. Wow, this God does not only punish, he also provides us with food. The source of all blessing is from him, actually. He cares about us. He's so compassionate. And he's forgiving, too. We made mistakes. And he forgave us. They begin to see another side of God. God begins to communicate in a very powerful way, of course. They see, wow, look how he speaks to us. This is the language that he speaks to us, not just with punishment, but also with kindness. That's very, very important. So when you read the Haggadah, you see all of that. The Jew now sees, wow, look what he has done for us, not just in Egypt, but throughout our history. He saved us and protected us. Whereas other empires came and are gone. They disappeared from the scene, even though we were beaten and persecuted. Time after time, generation after generation, they stand up against us. They want to destroy us. Read history and you will see it. You will see how many countries kicked us out in Europe. England, Great Britain, right? They're so cultured, they kicked us out twice. So intolerant of those who are different. Inquisition, the Crusades, read history. So the Haggadah is a small summary of events, not just as they occurred in Egypt, but as they will be occurring with us throughout our history. That even though we're persecuted, even though we are in dire straits, the word Mitzrayim, Egypt in Hebrew, also could be translated as Mitzarim, difficulties, straits, challenges. We will have many Mitzrayim, not just once. And who will take us out? God. This brings hope. This instills a lot of hope, especially imagine a Jew reading this Haggadah in prison, reading it in poverty, reading it when he's really destitute completely, no wife, no children, miserable, painful life, painful experience. He says, where's God? Well, the same God that took you out of Egypt can take you out of this misery too. You need to communicate with him. There's a certain language to communicate with him. We'll talk a little bit about that too. How do we communicate with him? But he communicates with us, and he has done so over history. And the Haggadah has a summary of all that has happened in the past and all that will happen in the future. So what do we see? The most important lesson of the Haggadah, that this God is not just one that punishes, is one that is kind, righteous, and forgiving. Once we understand a little bit better his language, we also realize what he wants. And what does he want? He wants the best for us. He wants the best for us and for humanity. Then why is there so much war and pain and suffering? If that's what he wants for us, and he has demonstrated that he's kind and forgiving, then why so many difficulties and so much pain? Look at the weather. In some places, it's extremely cold. It snowed who knows how many feet. Storms, volcanoes, earthquakes, floods. Does God really care about us? Does he love us? Does he want our best? Then what about that? What about all the wars? And here comes the answer to what you were wondering. In what language does God really talk to us? In the same language that we speak to each other. If people are evil to each other, if people do not behave themselves properly, then that's the language that God will use to speak to them. We will see troubles, we will see misery. And it's not for nothing. He's speaking to us in the language that we use to speak to other human beings. Very, very simple. That's the language that God uses to communicate with us that something is not right. This is not what I want for you. For sure not. I created a beautiful world and you are destroying it. You're going against my wishes. So he's using the same language because that's the language maybe we will understand because that's what we use to speak to other human beings. The world has been using evil. Throughout history, just read the history, you'll see how much evil has occurred from the very beginning of times. What is the world busy today manufacturing? Not only microchips. Of course, there's a lot of things that the world is busy manufacturing. But why so many missiles and bombs and tanks? Who needs it for? What do you need it for? To do more war, to kill more people. Unfortunately, sometimes we have no choice. I'm not talking about those. But the vast majority of battles and wars in the world, including World War I and World War II, including what's going on today in Europe, doesn't make sense. Totally does not make any sense why people should want to kill each other. And NATO just fuels the fire even more. They don't realize what they're doing. Where's all the effort to stop the evil in a peaceful way, without war, without bombs and missiles? But this is the language that they're used to from the very beginning of time. They don't realize that there's another language that can bring people together, not just war. So that's why God speaks to us in this manner. When we see things that do not make sense, things that are painful to us, whether it's the weather, whether it's war, something is wrong with us. It must be something that we're not doing right. Imagine going out your front door one day and seeing the real typical Southern California weather of beautiful 70 degrees. The birds are chirping, the flowers, the trees are blossoming, the grass is fresh, and you can smell all the roses and all the other fragrant flowers. You for sure will admire it, take it in, and be so happy that you're able to experience it and enjoy it. Now, let's take a look at another example, the opposite example. You open the door, you look, oh, it's gray, or it's raining, or it's hailing, or worse, you were shaken up by an earthquake, stormy, cold. You think that's the kind of world God created, that there should be such extremes? Remember this very important point. Whenever there are extremes, there's no balance in nature, that means that man is not balanced. There's something that is wrong in his behavior. That is what we see. We see it in the weather and we see it in the economy. We see it in various areas. So the weather can either smile at you or be bitter at you. In the same way that we are smiling to others or we're bitter with others, the face that we show others is what we get back and is reflected on us from the weather and from other areas. People trust in the bank. People put their money in the banks. People feel safe putting their money in the banks. And what do you hear recently? Some banks failed. And there's no guarantee that the economy will last the way we know it. With all the inflation, devaluation, there could be a collapse in the economy, which is what the rabbis predict will happen before Mashiach comes. Where man has put his trust, he will realize that he shouldn't have put his trust there. He should have put his trust in God. But instead, he put it in the wrong things. So all these things eventually collapse because they're not real. People think, oh, this bank failed because they made mistakes in how they invested their money. Remember another important point here. There are no mistakes. No, there's no such thing as a mistake. Everything is ordained from above. Human beings make mistakes, whether it's a leader of a country, whether it's a bank, regardless. And it affects people on a large scale. It's all from above. It cannot be that one leader of a nation or a bank that has the money of many people should make a mistake and people will suffer consequences. It's all from above. God is speaking to us. He's using a language to communicate to us that He's in charge. And why aren't things going right? Well, why are we having so many troubles all over the world? Why are couples ending up getting divorced? Because the world is not united. Very simple. There's no unity. Couples are not united enough. And why is there no unity? Also very simple. There's no common cause. What is there instead of a common cause? competing causes, competing ideologies. When obviously the wife wants certain things, believes in certain things very strongly, and the husband believes in other things very, very strongly, and they don't have a common cause that they're going to work towards achieving, they're going to have a very, very difficult life. They're going to struggle. Even if they stay together, it's going to be very, very difficult. You have to have some common cause. The world today does not really have a common cause. Real common cause, but they made the United Nations. No, that's all very, very superficial. It's just a show. They haven't really accomplished that much. We wish that they would go together, all the nations of the world, and use all their resources to help the poor and to really help this world in an important way. They haven't done that. It's competing ideologies. They have competing interests. They can therefore never, never get along. And that's what happens also in a home. A home is like a microcosm of the world. Husband and wife, very, very different. Men and women are very, very different. They speak very, very different languages, by the way, if you haven't figured this out yet. I'm still learning. Very difficult to be fluent, for a man to be fluent in a woman's language. I may be the first one to admit it. Not easy, not easy. But I have a trick that I'm going to share with you that will not only help you at home, it will help you get along with people, it will help you get along with God, and it has to do with learning a new language. How do you learn a new language? There's a lot of books and methods. Everybody will try to sell you what they have. Obviously, the best way to learn a language is to live in the country. But let's say we're not living in that country. If you want to learn it properly, you obviously have to first have made a decision. I'm going to learn this language. I'm going to succeed. Imagine a husband and wife going to the chuppah, they're getting married. So he bought her a nice ring, and she bought him something else. What's missing here? Sir, Mrs., do you want to succeed? Do you want to learn each other's language? If you ask them that question, they would say, oh, I never thought about that. You mean to learn her? She has a different language than me? They never told you that? You're in for a big surprise. Yes, she speaks a different language. She speaks English. No. I don't mean that language. There's another language called women language. There's a man's language. What's important to the man? Let me tell you something. If you want to succeed and you want to learn the language, you have a better chance than if you don't want to learn the language. And a lot of men will not tell it to you openly, but deep down, they don't want to work so hard to learn this language. So how do you learn the language? The best way to learn any language is first build up your vocabulary. If you know 1,500 words, give or take, of any language, you can communicate in that language. You may not be able to read the newspaper and understand everything, but you can communicate, you can get along, you can ask for certain things, you can know certain things that are going on. 1,500 words. There's some 1,500 words in a vocabulary of a language that are very, very useful. In the same way it is with a relationship. There's certain basics. There's certain words that we need to learn. And they will make the entire difference. And the words to build up a relationship, to be able to communicate properly and successfully in a relationship, many of those 1,500 words consist of a common denominator called gratitude, appreciative of each other. A lot of the words, if you use them properly, whether it's happy birthday, whether it's thank you, the meal is so good, it all has to do with words of saying thank you, being grateful, appreciating the other for what they did. If you're able to master those words, yes, honey, I'm telling you, you outdid my mother even. Wow. My respects. I'm so surprised. How did you do it? Even though you may have exaggerated a little bit, it's okay. As long as there's some truth to it. You know what difference this will make to her mood, to her interest in continuing. Yes, my husband appreciates me. I hear it all the time, how important it is for the wife to be appreciated, much more than the man. You know, the man has his ego, he has other problems. But appreciation is so fundamental in human relationships. So that's the vocabulary in building up the relationship between human beings. And now I have a surprise for you. That's the same vocabulary that Hashem wants to have from us when we speak and communicate to Him. Do you appreciate everything that I have done for you? Do you consider everything that I have done for you? Do you pay attention? You know how much I have done for you as a people from the very beginning of time until today? Just read the Haggadah, read the history of your people, how I protected you. Do you appreciate that? Who did appreciate that? One example, David, just read Psalms. He put together a whole book of praises. Thank God. And one of those praises that he says is so powerful. We say it in the Hallel, in the prayer of Hallel. Ma ashiv l'Hashem kol tagmoloi alai. What can I give back to Hashem? I owe him so much. He has done so much for me. You know what I can do? He says, Kos yeshuot esav v'shem Hashem ekra. I will raise the cup of salvation. I don't know if I'm translating correctly, but more or less, I will raise the cup of salvations. V'shem Hashem ekra, and I will call out in the name of God. What that means is that I will share my experiences and my miracles with people. I will tell them how God was so great and so kind with me. So by sharing your own personal experiences that are miraculous, where you have seen the grace of Hashem, is so special because hopefully it will enlighten others. Hopefully it will instill in them hope. You can do so much to elevate people's spirits by sharing your own positive experiences and your smile and your kind words with them. Because this is the language that God speaks to us, and He wants us to speak to Him in that language. And this is the way couples can succeed as well. This is the strongest connection that they will ever have. If they have this basic vocabulary, words containing appreciation and gratitude. I'm always surprised to see how animals, wild animals, lions and elephants even, not just dogs, they can remember someone who did a favor for them, that saved their life. Have you ever seen those pictures or videos of a lion, a wild animal? It hasn't seen the person who helped it when it was a little cub for years. And it recognizes, and he hugs the man or woman who took care of them when they were cubs. Dogs that were lost for years, thousands of miles away, when they came home, they recognized their master, their original one that took care of them. Elephants have even a longer memory. Animals should be able to know who was kind to them, and human beings do not recognize it, do not acknowledge this. That's part of the problem of why there's a lack of unity. They don't have the basic glue, the basic vocabulary of appreciation. Appreciation enables unity. And since unity is so important, what happens on Pesach, he says a special sacrifice called Korban Pesach. And this sacrifice, today we don't have it because we don't have the Bet HaMikdash, the temple. It was very interesting. You invited a lot of people to come and join. You didn't eat it yourself, because we want to emphasize unity. We want to have everybody involved. Well, yes, but there's one exception. You know who is not invited to eat the Korban Pesach? Here we're talking about unity. There is one individual who's not invited and cannot partake in that festivity. One who doesn't believe in it. One who's going to make fun of it. One who's going to ridicule you for doing that. You don't want him present in your home. This is a time to build up the faith, we said. This is a time to strengthen the connection between us and God, to talk about His miracles. So imagine somebody tell you, miracle? That's not a miracle. That's just Mother Nature. You don't want Him at that meal of Thanksgiving. He's going to cool you off. There's a lot of snakes out there, a lot of serpents, remember? All kinds that will cool you off and tell you, well, man, this is too much. This is exaggerated. This doesn't apply anymore. Let's change the Torah a little bit. Come on, make it easier. Serpents, dangerous serpents. You don't want them around at this Korban Pesach when we're so thankful to Hashem, when we're finally expressing our gratitude to Him for everything that He has done. No, not at this Seder, not at this Korban Pesach. So we've spoken a little bit about the connection that Hashem wants to have with us. If we are able to put it in a few words, what exactly He expects of us in order to form this relationship, whether you are a Jew or non-Jew, what would it be? So another prophet tells us the answer to that. You don't need the Haggadah Shel Pesach. You're not Jewish. Let's say you're not Jewish. What's common to all of humanity? What Hashem really expects of us? In a few words, not 1,500. Right? So the prophet says, all Hashem really wants of you is three things. Three. Asot mishpat, ahavat chesed, v'atznei alechet im Elokecha. He wants you to be fair and just. He wants you to be kind. And He wants you to walk humbly in His ways. These are the three things. You may recall that from the prophets. The one that stands out the most from the three is Ahavat Chesed. Hashem has shown us loving kindness. That He's just, it's hard for us to see sometimes because there's what appears to be contradictions. He's sometimes very tough. He needs to be tough because that's what justice is all about. Justice doesn't only mean to be just and fair. Justice means to sometimes use the attribute of justice to correct people for their own good, to remind them that they're not doing the right thing. That's also part of him being kind to us. So that's what the one that stands out the most, that he is, and he wants us to emulate, is Ahavat Chesed, loving kindness. That's my language to you. That's what Abraham noticed when he saw the world, he saw the creation. He noticed that God is so kind and so merciful. He takes care of all the creatures in the world. He provides them with everything they need. Wow! Then that's perhaps what he wants from us. And that's something that's been missing in mankind from the very beginning of history because of competing causes, not one main cause. I recommend, by the way, that if you meet people who perhaps you have differences with, people that you may not want to go out of your way to help them for whatever reason, at the very least, smile to them. Say a good word. You know, you have a baby that's crying. What do? You give them a pacifier. Have you noticed that? What happens? Usually, the pacifier pacifies them. Human beings, adults, also need a pacifier, a smile, a good word. The only way you can do that, by the way, and not deceive yourself, is if you inject yourself with something. What's that something? Not the corona things. You know, they have injections for corona. Not those injections. Flu shots? No, not flu shots either. There's one injection that can actually help a lot of us, even though we're going through a hard time, even though we don't like certain people, they've not been nice to us. Inject yourself with optimism, simcha, happiness. Very, very difficult, by the way, to be able to have that at all times in you. You have to inject it very often. There's so many things that will shake us up in life. And they're called moods. Mood swings, yeah. People didn't go to work, they were sick, somebody insulted them. Inject yourself with optimism. And then you say in Hebrew, Gam ze ya'avor. This too shall pass. That's a very good attitude to have when we're dealing with difficult people, difficult situations. Gam ze ya'avor. It will pass. Inject yourself with optimism and don't despair, don't give up hope. Today was not such a good day. Tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem, will be a better day. Just like to end that this generation is very special. We are at the end of the movie, if we can call it that. A movie that began 5,783 years ago, according to our calendar. There's a certain script. Not everybody read the script. You know, sometimes you're able to go to Hollywood and they'll give you the script of the movie and you can see the beginning, the middle, the end. We have a script. It is written to an extent. It is written what will be, what is coming next. And we're at the end. Hopefully the worst is behind us, all the pain and suffering. But there's something missing. Something missing that's very, very much needed at the very end. You go to Manhattan and you go to certain cities where they have big skyscrapers and you will see, wow, look what the world has accomplished, look what they have achieved. They've built a lot of buildings that are very, very tall. Have you heard about Dubai? You know, everybody's competing with each other who's going to build the highest skyscrapers. But those skyscrapers really don't have too much significance except for having maybe a lot of stories, either 100 stories or 120 stories. The verse says like this, If Hashem does not help us in building our home, then it is in vain that the builders work so hard. It's in vain, because no matter how hard they work, if Hashem is not involved and does not approve of that structure, of that union, it will fall apart. What people need to do is not just invest in building skyscrapers, is in building themselves. And the only way that people can actually build themselves and therefore build a relationship with another individual, another human being, a couple, a partnership, any relationship is not just a structure made out of stones. It's to be accepting and appreciative of each other. That's the real building. That's the glue, like we said before. That's the vocabulary. That's the cement, not the structure. Those can fall. Those can easily fall apart. If we do that, if we use that vocabulary in building our own relationships, then Hashem will also listen to our prayers. Why will He listen to our prayers? Because the greatest form of prayer is gratitude. That's the greatest form of prayer. And if we're using that gratitude with other human beings, then when we pray to Hashem and say, thank you Hashem for everything, we will be communicating very powerfully with Hashem as well. That is what He wants to see from us, and that is the essence of what happens in the Haggadah when we express our gratitude and appreciation for everything. This is the vocabulary that people do not have. And that is why one of the most important passages of the Haggadah is the following: Baruch Shomer Avtachato. You know what that means? Blessed be he who keeps his word. If you recall, very important passage in the Haggadah, because what we're saying is, look, Hashem kept his word and he took us out of Egypt. We appreciate that. We realize that that's so important. He has kept his word in the past and he will keep it once again when he brings us the Mashiach very soon. Very important idea to keep in mind. He has kept his word in the past. You have no reason to doubt. Yes, it's painful. Yes, it's very difficult. There's war. Yes, but he's going to keep his word again. And last but not least, even though we've spoken so much about the importance of gratitude and appreciation, I want to just quote to you what John F. Kennedy has said, which is very, very true and something that we can take with us. And he said like this: let's not forget, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. That's the greatest challenge of all. We know these things. They make sense to us, but we must be ready to live by them. And that is, of course, what the Torah teaches us. That is how the Torah guides us. That is what Hashem expects of us. And if we do so, if we make any effort in the way of showing greater appreciation for Hashem, it will help us appreciate what other people do as well for us. It's the two of them are connected. And when Hashem sees we appreciate everything, of course, he says, the same miracles that I performed for you in the past, God willing, I will perform to you very soon. Amen.